What's going on, everyone? Welcome into another NFL Draft Guide episode. We are covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. Today, we see they don't have a first-round pick. They used that last year to jump up in the draft to draft Travis Hunter. Now, let me explain the science here that we're working with today. We are trying to identify 50% of the top 100 picks correctly. Will that happen? It's a thought experiment. The way that we're doing it, number one, is we have every single team need based off of consensus and my opinion. So for the Jags, they need a corner, defensive line, linebacker help. Defensively, they got ransacked in free agency. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, Greg Newsome, he's terrible, but that doesn't matter. Depth at corner is much needed. Now, Travis Hunter is becoming a full-time corner. That's going to be interesting to see. But as we saw last year, he was injured for a lot of the season. So is he a reliable option? I don't know if the Jags think so. So corner, defensive line, linebacker, running back with the absence of Travis Etienne. I got it. I got the pronunciation. I live in Louisiana, so I understand. Safety, interior offensive line, and wide receiver. Last but certainly not least, especially considering that Travis Hunter will no longer be a part-time wide receiver or whatever that is. He is a full-time corner now. Moving on to team selections, explaining the science. We see picks 1 through 100. We've got the Jags 56, 81, 88, and 100. Then after that, we have compiled almost every single known source to man. Let's go back up and just look through all of these. We have every single team's draft, combine visits and interviews, pro day attendance, and 30 visits. Now, the Jags were actually a team who elected to not use any 30 visits. So this is a very hard team to identify picks for. Let me explain the rest of the science here. We have gone through every single top 200 prospect, graded them ourselves, looked at DraftBuzz, ESPN, CBS, NFL, Pro Football Focus, averaged them together, and placed them into overall ranks 1 through 200. This, to me, is the best way to identify where some of these players are going to be going. Now, let's move back to the Jags, and we will talk about pick 56. Pick 56 is the only one that is going to be, to me, quote-unquote, easily identifiable based off of the information that I have. It seems that Keith Abney, a corner in this draft, is going to be the number one target for the Jags here. If we go back to our prospect rankings, look at the cornerback position group, and we go to Keith Abney here, he is ranked as the 60th best prospect overall. We've got him all the way up in the 40s. All the way down to 114, so a fairly polarizing prospect. I think if the Jags could get him here, I believe I had him ranked as 63. So this is a pretty accurate comp. The Jags have interviewed him and met with him. He is the one and only corner at this range that they have met with. I don't see any record of them meeting with Keontae Scott or Malik Muhammad. I didn't see them meet with D'Angelo Pons. I did see that they met with Chris Johnson, the corner out of San Diego State. And while, yes, I completely understand why they like him, Chris Johnson's actually in my top 40. I think he's at 37. I do not think he'll be there at 56 for the Jags. I have him last on my list of 4 prospects here. Once again, we're trying to identify per pick 4 prospects that I think will be drafted at that position. We're doing it because this is an interesting thought experiment, quite frankly. So, Keith Abney, Chris Johnson, those are the corners that I think will be identified. The Jags have always had really strong tight end play. They lost some tight end depth. I saw that they met with Eli Stowers, the tight end out of Vanderbilt. He had some crazy combine numbers. And while, yes, I do think that he's within the quote-unquote range, I do not think he'll be at 56. He is a very high-demand prospect. I think a lot of other teams are going to see that, and somebody's probably going to nab him before 56, but I could be stood corrected on that. Last but certainly not least, looking at these prospects, wide receiver help and depth was a crucial team need here. And Antonio Williams, wide receiver out of Clemson. This was a guy that I actually had in my top 5 wide receivers to start the college football season. I think he's got a great body archetype for the NFL. Right now, he's currently ranked 51st on my prospect list. He is a little bit underrated in my opinion. The production numbers aren't necessarily there to prove that he's like a go-getter, but in my opinion, and when I say go-getter, I'm talking about like heavy targets. I do think he can do that in the NFL, but if he's more of a possession guy, I don't think this is a bad play for the Jags at all. Now, you do already have Brian Thomas, but pairing these two together could kind of be like pairing Michael Pittman Jr. and DK Metcalf together up in Pittsburgh. I like it. So, to recap, 56, I've got Keith Abney, Antonio Williams, Eli Stowers, Chris Johnson. Those are my four that I think the Jags will pick from. If I'm right, I'll be very happy about that. Now, we go back to this team needs list. We look at the Jags. They've got 81, 88, and 100. And I'll admit, I think I cheated here. But you know what? It's my show. I can do whatever the hell I want. I combined these three picks together, and I am going to give you, I think, 13 prospects. Slight bit of cheating, but these are all players that the Jags have either met with or fit their team needs perfectly and are within this range. At running back, which I do think they're going to be targeting pretty early in this draft, if for some reason Jadarian Price falls to 56, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jags took him there. I don't think he will. But Mike Washington posted some great combine numbers. He's actually my personal graded second best running back in the class. I have him over Jadarian Price just because I've seen what he looks like with volume, and it is off the charts. I love Mike Washington, had a great combine. Next is Jonah Coleman, and I do not think the Jags would take him in one of these selections, but at number 100, I would not be surprised if the Jags took him there. Now, at corner, we've got a slew of picks here that the Jags will be picking from. Malik Muhammad, Davison Igbinosun out of Ohio State, Dalen Everett out of Georgia, Chandler Rivers out of Duke, who Rivers, by the way, I saw in some mock drafts early on in the college football season, was mocked up into the first and second round. I mean, my goodness, how the mighty have fallen. I definitely am a little higher on Rivers than most. A 4th round grade is what he's got right now, maybe even a 5th round grade. I think is a little better than that. I think a late day 2 pick would suffice. And then last but certainly not least in the cornerbacks room is Will Lee out of Texas A&M. Love that pick. I definitely think that would fit the Jaguar style. Not exactly the biggest frame out there, but can get the job done nonetheless. Now we go into defensive line. We've got Darrell Jackson Jr. out of Florida State, kind of a local pick. Darrell Jackson Jr. had an excellent close to his college career, in my opinion. Loved the tape, even if some people didn't. Grayson Halton, I think Grayson Halton, yes, out of Oklahoma. Yet another premier defensive lineman. He's ranked all the way down at 104, I believe, if I go and look at my defensive tackle rankings. Yes, but some have him. He is a very polarizing prospect. As you can see here, ESPN has him graded at the 59th best prospect in this draft, and CBS has him all the way down at 174. I personally have him in my mid-70s. I think he is a development guy that could absolutely shine in the NFL, even though I don't think he's the youngest guy in this draft. He definitely has more potential than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And then next on my list, I've got, I believe, number 106 on this list, Dante Corleone. Mr. Corleone, the Mafia man himself, defensive lineman out of Cincinnati. Very excited to see what he has to offer. This actually was a top 3 defensive lineman for me heading into last year's college football season. Cincinnati just didn't have a great year, and other people on the defense kind of stole the show, like Jake Galdi. So I'm really looking forward to see what Corleone has to offer in the NFL. Now we close out with 3 more prospects, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Deontay Lawson out of Alabama. This is one of my favorite prospects. Had a lot of injuries throughout college. Came back from last year's, I think he had a torn ACL to start the season in 2024 and missed the entire season. Comes back in 2025. Didn't have the best season by any means, but definitely played at a very high level when the moments were really big. Liked Deontay Lawson for the entirety of his career at Alabama. I think he will serve an NFL team well, and I would not be surprised to see him as a day 2 pick. Now we move on to the safety position, and we talk about 2 guys. Bud Clark out of TCU, he's been a pretty high demand pick or high demand prospect in all of these combine visits and whatnot, the pro day visits and the 30 visits and all this other jazz. I think Bud Clark is going to be a day 2 pick. Genesis Smith. Now, this is one that I actually think is going to be a day 3 pick, a 4th round selection, but I would not be surprised to see the Jags go ahead and punch that ticket in right there at pick number 100. I mean, 100 is basically a 4th round selection, but let's go ahead and give you a quick recap here for pick 56. We'll go back to our selections here. Pick 56, I've got Keith Abney, Antonio Williams, Eli Stowers, and Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson is a major stretch. For some reason, he's there. The Jags are 1,000% picking him up. Now we go ahead and add our slew of picks for 81, 88, and 100. We've got Mike Washington, Malik Muhammad, David Igbinosun, Dalen Everett, Chandler Rivers, Will Lee, Daryl Jackson Jr., Grayson Holton, Dante Corleone, Deontay Lawson, Bud Clark, and Genesis Smith. Now, there are a couple of day 3 picks that I think are possible, and I'll just add those in just because I used to be a Jags fan. I do want the organization to do well. Jonah Coleman and Emmett Johnson at running back, those are 2 prospects that kind of piqued my interest with the Jags. It seems that Emmett Johnson maybe have had the Jags go and visit him instead of doing like a traditional 30 visit. I know that I told you the Jags declined to do any 30 visits, but there are rumors that they went and visited Emmett Johnson to meet with him after his pro day. At interior offensive line, I also have Parker Brailsford. Now, Brailsford did not have the dominant season that I guess he was hoping for in his last year at Alabama, but people have him a solid day 3 selection, maybe even an early, or a late day 2 selection. Doubt that very seriously given his smaller frame and stature, but I would not be surprised to see the Jags grab him and grab some depth at the interior offensive line position, specifically at center. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Once again, thanks for watching. See you next time.